Welcome back to Morgan's video blog, Morgan's online blog in video format. This week, I'm here to share with you how to be a good moderator. Having attended, at this point, easily over 100 panels in the last 5 years, I definitely have opinions. And there is one role that can make or break a panel. Whether you're a writer guest of honor, on a panel at a convention, or just hosting a dinner party, being a good moderator is a highly underrated skill. Now, my favorite panels are when the big names are friendly and informative, and the smaller names are confident with their answers without anyone talking over each other. In the titular panel, Barbara Krasnov, Greg Larson, D.H. Ayer, Jennifer Povey, and Jasmine Cosplays, moderated by, I think it was Barbara, but really, it was the most polite and self-moderated example of a panel I have ever seen. Not surprisingly, as it was made up of moderators. Which leads us into, of course, the discussion for today. So, how to prepare to moderate. When you sign up to be a panelist or you're asked to be one, pay attention when you get that schedule. If you've got a big M in parentheses next to your name, you are the moderator. Which means you don't have to know everything about the topic. You just have to make sure that your panelists share everything they have time to share. So, step 1, read up on your topic and your fellow panelists. Step 2, prepare open-ended questions, which leads us into step 3. If you read the panel description, sometimes it gives you all the questions you need to fill 50 minutes, or however long the panel is going to go for. Tip 4, if you get fellow panelists emails, reach out and coordinate. Ask them what questions they'd like to be asked. If there are any identity-sensitive questions, give them a heads up. And pay attention if there are tangents or topics they ask to avoid. And finally, decide if you want to give them introductions, in which case, get them to send those to you, or if you want to just make them introduce themselves at the beginning of the panel. So, you have prepared for the panel, you have shown up at the convention, you have made it to the panel, and now you're sitting at a table with like 5 other people staring at the audience. How do you guide this conversation? Now, there are panels that basically just run themselves. The panelists are solid on the topic and friendly and gracious with taking their turns and make lots of fascinating points. Other times, the conversation could use your guidance. So, first off, know who the audience is here to see. If there's a big name or subject matter expert, you might want to let them talk a little more. But not too much. Tip 2, make sure everyone gets a turn. If someone is going on a bit, redirect. Tip 3, if you think you're going to have a chatty panelist or two, at the beginning, set up rules and let them know that they're only going to have 1 or 3 or whatever minutes to answer each question. Tip 4, ask leading questions. Your job is to make the other panelists look good, but you can also use leading questions to get back on topic after a tangent. Note, if the audience is looking intrigued by the tangent, you can let it go on for a little bit. Tip 5, watch the panelists. If someone is speaking and someone else looks like they have something to say, go back to them and give them a chance to answer or, add in their matching thoughts, as long as they haven't been dominating the conversation. Tip 6, a difference of opinions is a good thing. People don't want to just sit there and watch everyone agree with the exact same thing as you go down the line, especially if it's a case of personal preference and not a personal attack. Tip 7, if the panel conversation seems to be running dry or the topic is too obscure to have too much to say about it, if it's very specific, you know, don't hesitate to open the floor for questions. Which leads to tip 8, of course. Save 10 minutes at the end for a question and answer period. And don't hesitate to open up the floor early if the conversation has ground to a halt. If the audience is huge, you may want to open up to questions and answers earlier. Tip 9, the last 2 minutes should be for the panelists to give their closing thoughts on the topic and to give their book or whatever product and social media plugs. And finally, if you run out of time at the end, you can always tell people to send in their questions via social media, assuming anyone on the panel is actually open to answering questions after the allotted time. Which brings us to the next topic. Let's get a little more into how to shut up panelists. So some panelists love to hear themselves talk. Others talk a lot when they're nervous, and others are just so excited about the topic that they're overflowing with information and things to say. But a panel isn't a monologue or, you know, a blog post like this, and sometimes you just gotta move that conversation right along. Or a panelist might be working their way towards embarrassing themselves or getting a little too worked up. So here are a few things you can say to redirect that conversation. Thank you, speaker. Quiet panelist, what did you think about what speaker just said? Another way to redirect is, thank you. Let's give other panelists a chance to answer the question. Especially if you're using the timer method, you can go with, I'm gonna have to stop you there, our time's getting a little short, or now it's time to move on to next panelist. If there's a tangent that's kind of interesting, you can always cut in and say, that's a great topic. I'm going to suggest it for a panel next year. And if all else fails, hey, I think somebody in the audience has a question. Which leads us to how to moderate the audience. Sometimes the ones you need to watch out for aren't at the table with you. Although some of the audience thinks that they should be on this panel, and some of them may have actually been excellent additions. So when it comes to moderating the audience, first off, be firm. The rest of the audience is here to see the panelists, not listen to the audience monologue. When you open the floor for questions, you can let them know questions only, no statements. It's very common at cons to see someone raise their hand, and when they're called on, what's your question? Oh, it's more of a statement, really. And then they want to share their answer to the questions or fill in some answer that they feel that one of the panelists didn't fully answer, etc. It's pretty common. So, secondly, if they're rambling, cut in, did you have a question in there? Another thing you can do is go back to what I said above of, that's a great topic for a panel. You should suggest it for next year. If they're talking and there doesn't seem to be quite a question and it's time to just stop them for now, you can turn to the panel and go, does anyone want to address that? And if an audience member crosses the line, either by repeatedly ignoring your request by tangenting or monologuing, or saying something beyond the pale, you can kick them out. You're the moderator. You can just go, I'm sorry, but you're going to have to leave. And then just wait. Or ask someone near the door to call for security if they don't seem to leave willingly. So, that said, conversation control is kind of, it can be challenging, and it's definitely all improv. But there are things you want to avoid. So let's get into the next section, how to be a bad moderator. Dun, dun, dun. Now, the panel I attended didn't get into this too much, but I think the answers are clear just from looking at, let's say, the negative space of the answers I just went over. So here are my top 9 ways to be a horrible moderator. Tip 1, let it tangent off topic with an irritated audience while there's still plenty of topic to cover. Tip 2, don't let the audience ask questions. Who are they anyway? Tip 3, treat the panel as your platform with the other panelists as like supporting characters or something. Tip 4, single out one panelist based on their identity and make them speak for all people of their race or gender or ability, etc. Tip 5, share any fellow panelist contact information you have publicly. Tip 6, let people talk all over each other. I mean, it's entertaining, right? Tip 7, tell people that their opinions are wrong. Tip 8, let the audience or panelists bash each other. I mean, who doesn't like seeing a good fight? It'll give you plenty to talk about and maybe get people to buy you drinks at the bar later. And tip 9 for how to be a bad moderator, spew hateful rhetoric. So, a good panel is informative, entertaining, and friendly. If you stay in this industry, it's likely that you're going to see the same people on future panels. If you moderate panels that people enjoy participating in or attending, it's likely that they'll look forward to being on panels with you in the future. Thanks for tuning in. As always, feel free to subscribe, and next week I'll be back sharing more writing tips and writerly musings from my ridiculous number of notes from the over 24 hours of programming I attended Memorial Day weekend. So, bye-bye. See you next time.